Today we're very pleased to welcome Andrew Reeves and Hadyn Williams, who are both from BACP, which stands for the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. And today we're here to talk a bit about the organisation, introduce it, and some of the very important work it does for the profession. I also know that you've travelled quite a long way to be here today, so I really want to thank you for making the effort and coming here to talk to us. So perhaps we can just start by saying a little bit about the nature and perhaps a little bit about the history of the organisation, together with something about your roles.
Perhaps I can start. And BACP is a professional body. I think often a sort of misunderstanding what it is, and it is there to represent the profession of counselling and psychotherapy. It is there to represent the membership. And it started quite some time ago, back in the late 70s, as I understand it, in a room above a butcher's shop in Rugby, where as a group of very committed therapists with a strong sense of social justice, who wanted to try and create a strong sense of community and identity for counselling within the United Kingdom. And so they wanted to think about how you create standards, how you represent ethical practice, how you formulate good codes of conduct, how you start representing the profession as a coherent voice. And that's where it began.
So pretty much towards the beginning of counselling, really, I think.
Yes.
At least when counselling came into Britain.
Yeah, absolutely. And as it was growing, as counselling as a profession was growing some sort of distinct identity from traditional psychoanalysis. And so there's a real sense of being pioneering and driven by a strong sense of social justice, working for the community, of taking the concept of counselling, actually making a difference to society.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've always liked the phrase, something like counsellors coming from the community and going back to work in the community.
Yes, and that's exactly where its origins, that's exactly the place at which it started. Right. And was a very small organisation. I joined the organisation as a member an awfully long time ago, about 25 or so years ago. And it was a small body, but even then it had a clear sense of identity, and I knew as someone who wanted to grow as a counsellor, the BACP was going to give me a clear identity, tapping me into an articulated community, a network of fellow practitioners. And it felt very exciting, incredibly supportive. And it was a small organisation then, but today it's grown to an organisation of over 44,000 members. So it's gone on its own quite significant journey. And for me, it's an enormous privilege to find myself now as chief executive there. Whenever that was supposed to happen, I don't know, but life is an extraordinary journey.
At this moment you could say something about this role, because it's also a fairly new role for you, I think.
Yes, it is a new role. Now, I've had a long-standing connection with BACP as a first and foremost as a member, as an accredited practitioner with BACP, and I went onto the board about 10 years or so ago. And as a co-opted member and trustee. And that gave me a lot of experience of what it was like within the heart of the organisation. I moved on from that and moved into the professional ethics committee because I have a strong passion for professional ethics and as professional ethics as a driver for high quality, great practice and supporting the public and the clients that we're serving. And about 4 years ago, an opportunity opened up for me to have a change of direction and to meld a variety of skills and to come in to set up and run professional conduct for BACP. And then getting involved in the development of the register, and things grew. And 6 months ago, I had the opportunity to apply to be chief executive. And here I am. and quite astounded, really, but hugely excited.
Thanks very much. So Andrew's also here, and he's chair of BACP. Do you want to say something about your role, and perhaps also something about the organisation today, and its, what's the purpose of the BACP today, for example?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just rewind a little bit. I think for me, which I think supports a lot of what Hadyn was just saying. I mean, I too joined BACP as a member, 20 odd years ago, and my original training was a social worker, so I was always drawn to social work in its widest sense, rather than a professional frame, but in its widest sense. Not the social work that I was doing, which was about care management and buying packages of care. I wanted to kind of work with people. I'm always drawn to the relationship. And to affirm what Hadyn was saying, BAC, as it was then when I first joined, and now BACP now when we added the psychotherapy bit, for me it was always about therapy being a social movement coming from the community, as you say. It's about people, and I think there's a lot of debate about distinctions between counselling and psychotherapy. I'm obviously not going to get into that too much, but for me, my own demarcation is around counselling is around a social movement, whereas psychotherapy perhaps has always had more of a connection with a medical orientation. That's a very loose demarcation, and some people will.
Well, that's its history, isn't it? Psychotherapy came out of the medical profession. I mean, Freud was a doctor.
Yeah. And I'm interested in systems, I'm interested in people, I'm interested in communities, I'm interested in families, I'm interested in how people function. So that's kind of how I joined. So I was a member for a long time. Unlike Hadyn, I've never worked for BACP previously. I've worked with BACP on a number of things. So I was editor of their research journal for nearly 6 years, and I was lead author for the Counselling Minded project, which was a Department of Health funded project, but organised and managed by the association, by BACP. And I decided to stand for the board. So Hadyn, when he joined the board, was a co-opted member, so he was brought to the board by the board, whereas I was an elected member, so I had to stand and was voted in by the membership. And I joined the board, and then have since become chair. And I'll just say a few words in a moment about what the chair does. But I joined the board, if I'm being really honest, because 90% of me really valued what BACP did. 10% of me was concerned about it losing its way. And for me, the bit about the social, the community, the social justice agenda, I think was always there, has always been embedded in what they do, but not as explicitly as I would have wanted. So that's kind of why I wanted to join the board, because I thought that's a good way in which I can perhaps bring my own perspective, for right or wrong. Right. And so for me, joining the board, it was about wanting to help BACP be really clear about its identity, about its philosophy, about its ideology. And
for both of you, it's about social justice.
I think what I'm saying is about me, but Hadyn will speak for himself, but I think we're very much of a similar mind on this. And I have to say, I think so is the staff and the volunteers who support and work for the association too, and I think if you asked them all individually, they would say similar things.
I mean, for me, as in a sense, an outsider, because I'm a counselling psychologist, I'm a member of the Division of Counselling Psychology of the British Psychological Society. The whole profession's really been under a huge challenge, both in terms of the Health Professions Council for many years, registers, all of this, plus there's this huge challenge of evidence-based practice and medicine. So it's been a difficult time. So I can see that we can all lose our way under those kind of pressures, really. And it's great that you both. I mean, I feel really quite almost inspired, really, that you're both here sitting talking about the roots of where counselling came from, and emphasising and revaluing social justice and community and all of that. Because it is different. There is a different culture for me, and it's the one that attracted me to counselling rather than psychotherapy. It's a more open, inclusive culture for me in counselling and psychotherapy. For me, tends to be a bit in its own little silos of this or that particular approach.
And I see it as our responsibility to be able to ensure that the focus on social justice and social responsibility is retained, augmented, developed, evolved, but at the same time that we are able to hold a real strong credibility across society to demonstrate that we are mindful of issues around accountability, ethical practice, public protection. These things can work creatively together, and it's our responsibility in the roles that we hold to ensure that's the case.
And I suppose that's really, really important, but I was going to, especially given your background as editor of a research journal, it's also about bringing research findings and supporting research and ensuring that it's also a research-informed profession.
Yes, in all its plurality, that it doesn't become too singular in that focus.
That's a very, very good point.